to them as they move their bodies in here. Welcome. It is so wonderful to see you. My name is Allison Druin. I am the Associate Dean for Research in the iSchool.
And my name is Ira Chinoy. I'm an associate professor in the College of Journalism, and together we are the directors of this University of Maryland's new Future of Information Alliance. And this enterprise is a campus-wide enterprise of which you are all now officially a part. And we're launching it with a week-long series of programs that we hope will cause you to ask questions, to explore, to compare experiences and ideas, and that we hope will inspire you to become thought leaders and innovators in this rapidly changing world of information.
Okay, so the thought leaders and innovators that we are calling our visiting futurists, they happen to be sitting over here, will shortly be introduced to you. But before that, we'd like to turn the microphone over to our Alliance colleague as well as our University of Maryland thought leader, Patrick O'Shea, the Vice President for Research. Patrick.
Thank you. Well, it's 1773 all over again. There's music in the cafes at night and revolution in the air. It's an information revolution led by new media. Thomas Paine and Benjamin Franklin are tweeting like crazy. As the vice president and senior research officer for the university, I oversee a diverse enterprise of knowledge creation. At a research university, we have the duty to uncover new knowledge, to advance creative and innovative ideas, and to apply those ideas to solve the grand challenges facing society. In the process, we educate students to observe, question, analyze, innovate, and act. Now, because of my new position, I've been vice president for research for 4 months, 2 weeks, 1 day. Okay, so because of this, people think that I am some kind of an oracle who can predict the future. But as you know, prediction is difficult, particularly in regard to the future. But anyway, everybody asks me, what's the next big challenge in research? And I give a pretty simple answer. You're on the right track if you focus on the basics. Things like food, water, air, energy, and information. Things people need. So are you ready to change the future of information? All right. Here we are. We come from every college in this university and outside of the university. As students, faculty, and staff, we have something fundamental in common. Information is critical in our lives, in our education, and in our research. Information is an essential part of who we are, yet we can be overwhelmed by it. We get frustrated with the new technologies. Why doesn't Siri understand my Irish accent? When I talk to her, she just doesn't get the message. Information can impact us in ways we don't expect. How do we address the scale and ever-changing nature of information? These are the common challenges that we face, which we have yet to fully explore. To address really big intellectual questions, we must change the way we have our conversations on campus. We must reach beyond the usual borders and disciplinary boundaries and engage in conversations with people with very diverse ideas, needs, and approaches. In this way, we can become a transdisciplinary community of research and education. The Future of Information Alliance can be thought of as an experiment in Research 2.0, a way of envisioning research that demolishes the boundaries between disciplines to create new pathways for conversations, collaborations, and creative scholarship. Therefore, the future of information is a challenge that is ripe for attack by the comprehensive forces that can be brought to bear by a leading, globally engaged research university such as the University of Maryland. Now, we're fortunate to have two co-founders for our Future of Information Alliance, Ira Chinoy from journalism and Alison Druin from the iSchool. However, this is not simply a journalism and high school collaboration. It involves all of the 13 colleges on this campus in its funding, in its board, and in its mission. The Alliance also includes some of the most prestigious leaders in government and non-profit organizations. Together, I know that we can change the future of information. And to launch this important alliance, we have invited our 3 leading innovators. We call them visiting futurists: Dan Russell from Google, Mary Sarinsky from Microsoft, and Abdur Chaudhry from Twitter. And those 3 companies are critically important. You know, when I heard about Osama bin Laden's death or Steve Jobs' death, I saw it on Twitter when I was looking at Google News on my Microsoft machines. So that's the future of things here. So these are the futurists will speak to us about their work today and spend the whole week with us, speaking at other events and sharing their time with the campus community and alliance partners and leading us in thinking deeply about the future. And remember, Ben Franklin is still tweeting. This is no joke. You can find him at The Real Franklin. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. O'Shea. So this alliance, in effect, is a university-wide think tank without walls. And as we said, you're all part of this. In addition to that, you've seen the names up here of our partners outside the university, many of whom have sent representatives here today. It's a pretty impressive list, and they also have a deep interest in information and in its future. Library of Congress, National Archives, thank you. I'm new to this whole technology thing. The Smithsonian, the Museum, National Park Service, National Geographic Society, Sesame Workshop, the Barry School, the Online Academy, and WAMU, the NPR affiliate here in Washington. Our goal by the end of this week, with the help of our visitors here, is to identify a set of grand challenges. Then next month, with the help of our 16-member brainstorming board, which hails from every college on this campus, we'll be announcing a seed grant program. So among the things that we hope to do as an alliance is both to generate ideas through this kind of event and to kickstart research with seed grants. And when we announce this, there'll be a premium on proposals that cross disciplinary lines. So I'd like to turn the mic over now to Allison, with whom it's been a pleasure to work. We've been working on this now for actually more than a year, getting to this week. And it was Allison's brainstorm that got us these 3 fabulous people here today. So Allison, take it away.
You're too kind, Ira. Okay, so when we set out to find our first visiting futurists, we looked for 3 people that were not only leaders in their field, but really were leaders in changing the future. And that's who these 3 people are. I happen to be lucky enough to know a little bit about them and to have met them in Danton, where you spend too much time. Sorry. Anyway, but these folks are some of the most amazing thinkers that I've had the chance to spend some time with. And so when we were thinking about who to bring, the only people I thought of were these 3. Now, let me give you the real bios, because otherwise you don't have to take my word for it. So we have Dan Russell here, Dr. Dan Russell. He's a research scientist who works as Google's Director of User Happiness. I want his title. And leads efforts to improve the effectiveness of web searching. He sometimes is called a search anthropologist because of his focus on understanding how people use the tools of technology to amplify their intelligence. He has held a number of positions at various different companies you might have heard of: Apple, IBM, Xerox PARC, and so on. He has also been an adjunct lecturer in the University of Santa Clara and taught special topics classes in artificial intelligence at Stanford University. I've heard of them. And he holds a PhD in computer science from the University of Rochester. So we welcome Dan. Thank you. I wish I had memorized their bios, but I haven't. Okay, now we have Dr. Mary Sarinsky. She's a research manager of the Visualization and Interaction Research Group they call VIBE. I like that. I want that name for my research group. At Microsoft Research, which means Mary leads one of the largest HCI research groups in the country. A fun fact that we figured out. Mary's research focuses primarily on novel information visualization techniques, and she's also studies information worker task management, multitasking, and awareness systems for individuals and groups. Her background is in visual attention and in visual attention and multitasking, and I can't do either. And she holds a PhD in cognitive psychology from Indiana University, and has been awarded the ACM SIG Chi Lifetime Service Award, and was inducted into the Chi Academy and became an ACM Distinguished Scientist in 2010. Welcome, Mary. And last but not least, Dr. Abdur Chowdhury, and I can't say his name very well, but I love his name though, was until a month ago the chief scientist at Twitter, and where he worked on search recommendations, extracting the signal from the noise. Previously, Abdur was chief architect for search at AOL, held positions at Georgetown's Computer Science Department and University of Maryland, I've heard of that place, Institute for Systems Research. Abdur actually went to Twitter via an acquisition of a search company he co-founded called Surmise. And Abdur holds a PhD in computer science from the Illinois Institute of Technology. Welcome, Abdur. So, what's the order of events? We will begin with Dan, because Dan actually was our first visiting futurist. For those of you that may have been here last year, Dan joined us at our Future of Information Forum that actually led to what we have today, which is the Future of Information Alliance. So we will start with Dan, then we're going to move to Mary, and finish with Abdur. We've asked each of them to close their presentations with a question for you, whom we think not just as an audience, but as participants. So you're all here to work, so hopefully you haven't come here to take it easy. And then we're going to open up the whole program, and we'll have full discussions, questions, answers, and so on. Well, with that, I'm going to assume the slides are there. Yeah, they're coming.
Allison,
What?
we're going to sit down so we can watch.
Oh, you want to watch? Okay, yeah, you go sit down over there. Okay, well, with that, I'm going to pass it to Dan and thank him for being our starting person without slides. There we go. Anyway, Dan, thank you.
Thank you.
Wouldn't be a conference about information technology without a glitch in information technology, so bear with us. It was working before. We'll get it.
Yep.
And I hear Dan can sing and dance, so, if we have to do that, we will.
Do this again. Yep, I'm in clone mode. I'll toggle it just to do it. So now it's not.
While this is happening, we should point out you can be tweeting about how this is not happening.
There you go.
Pound FIA UMD.
Yeah.
All right.
I hope you're not too unkind, though. We're all only human. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. You probably noticed when you walked in that on the left-hand side of the entrance, there's the Poe room. Did you notice that? Yeah. It's the Edgar Allan Poe room, and so it's a real treat to speak at a place like that. And so I actually tried to open the door, expecting to find telltale hearts, casks of Amontillado, and ravens. And I assume that they're in there. But it's a nice, I think, introductory metaphor, because Poe liked to write at sort of the edges of reality, the edges of Victorian, mystery and horror and goth and so on. And so I want to talk about my job as kind of being an adventurer at the interface of technology and humanity. And so what I'm going to do is spend a few minutes telling you what I do, how I do it, and conclude with a few thoughts about some challenges and opportunities as we go forward thinking about information. So now, Director of User Happiness, what do you really do? That's a very Californian, almost Marin-esque title. So what I really do is I think about people. I spend a lot of time going out and talking to people, sitting with them, trying to understand, why do they do that? Why do they do a particular thing when they're trying to find some piece of information from Google? And so I spend a lot of time trying to get inside their mind, trying to understand why they do that particular odd thing when they search, and how we can make the whole system improve. Google, the query parser, humans. I want to make everything better. That's a small goal, but I think we can work on it. What I do day to day is I work actually at 3 levels of resolution, of time resolution. So let me describe it like this. I work at the microscopic level. I think about actions and behavior millisecond to millisecond. So what do you do in that 100 milliseconds while you're waiting for the results to come back? Turns out we know from our experiments, this turns out to be critical. It's actually really important. 100 milliseconds matters a lot. I also work at the meso level, sort of mid-level observations. So from minutes to days kind of thing. I do that, and I watch to see how people's thinking evolves over time. And I also work at the mega or the macro level, trying to understand what millions and billions of queries mean to us. And what is it that people in the large are trying to do. So the way this is rolled out, what I actually do is I do a lot of eye tracking studies, where we watch how people's eyes move around on the page. We're trying to understand how they perceive these things and how we can shift the user interface to improve perception. We also do a lot of field studies where I go out to your house and I watch over your shoulder, or I go to your place of work and actually try to watch how you're using Google there. I go to coffee shops, I go to libraries, I do a lot of teaching of classes where I get the wonderful experience of teaching 50 people how to Google, how to speak Googleese. That's a fascinating experience in a public library, where I find people don't know where the address bar is. They don't know where the address bar is on the browser, right? You have to remember that there's a lot of people like that in the world, okay? And lastly, we do a kind of session analysis, and I'll touch on that at the end. So when we do eye tracking studies, it's like eye trackers everywhere throughout the world. You've all done eye tracking, right? Okay, well, what we do is we have an eye tracking lab, and we actually have a bunch of them around the company. And they kind of look like this. There's a usability lab where I'm taking this photograph from the observation room, looking into a place where there's a very ordinary looking monitor. People walk up, they start to use it, they do searches of various forms, and we watch to see what happens moment to moment. And let me show you a failed experiment. So this is, the pink dot is where your fovea is at this point, okay? And so I'm going to run this little video here. This is someone trying to notice what's different about the search results page here.
There's something different about this Google page from when you normally use it at home. Yeah. Well, it seems
watch the
that the
dot.
order of it is cleaner to read. Okay. It's like, it's like.
So here's the killer. You notice what's different, right? The blue triangles. In this 30-second clip, she never once looks at a blue triangle. Never. And so what happened is we discovered that visual attention is mediated by these processes. People saw that as typographic bullets, basically. They didn't realize they were actually interaction widgets. So failure. We did 12 people in a row. Nobody saw it. That was a product that didn't launch. So we learn a lot by doing that kind of low-level detail study. We also do a lot of field studies, as I said. And typically what happens is I'll go to someone's house, and here I'm at somebody's house, and she's trying to explain to me, how does a search engine work? Arthur C. Clarke had it right. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. To her, it's magic. She said, it's, I don't know, concentric circles of fuzzy logic. And that's kind of the level of understanding that people have about technology in the large. How does the Wi-Fi system actually work? How does security on your laptop actually work? Do you know? Well, do you really need to know? And so one of the things I'm interested in is to what level people need to understand these things. So here is, I won't read this all to you, but this is a transcript of one of my field interviews of a woman, has a master's degree from Penn, runs her own website, has her own television show. She's extremely well educated, and she gets so stuck in the way she's using the Google interface in this case. So she writes in the middle there, in section 38, she says, "Are Filipinos ready for gay flicks? How does it have to do with what I just did?" She was given the task of trying to find which actor has the most Oscars in the history of the Academy Awards. And so she ends up on a random topic, and she doesn't understand how. It was a mode-switching problem for the HCI people in the crowd. But for the person actually sitting at home trying to get something done, it was an insurmountable barrier. We have to fix stuff like that. So one of my main jobs is to go out in the field and watch real people doing real tasks and come back and say, you know, guys, that kind of sucks. We don't need to do it that way. We need to figure out a better way to do it. So that's the micro level, the meso level, and now at the macro level, we do things with lots of the logs that we do. So we have billions of people around the world every day doing something on Google. And what we try to do is to figure out a way to analyze that. And how can we use that information to drive the design of what we're doing? So here's a graph I showed last year of query volume over a regular Sunday in the upper one. And what you want to see is that green one. You see that's a very typical query volume by country, in this case, Germany. And this was actually a special Sunday when Germany was in the World Cup. Can you tell when the World Cup was? Can you tell when halftime was? Yes, you can. And so one of the things I try to do is to actually marry the difference between the quantitative in the large and the qualitative in the small, and figure out how we can take that information to get between the two. So you probably remember a few years ago, we introduced our Maps product. So this is 2005. And see that the results here on the right-hand side? A year later, we modified it to put it on the left because the logs showed us that the right-hand side was not working. People were not doing that. We moved it to the left. We essentially increased the click-through rate by a lot. Okay? A year later, we introduced icons. What a good idea. A little bit of iconography there so you can recognize very quickly which pizza place you want to go to. A year later, we did a bunch of other changes, and now this is the current UI, different visual look and feel. This is mostly driven by logged analysis, although we validate it by going in the field and watching if people can actually get their pizza. So in the end, what we did is over a course of 5 years, we went through multiple changes. Roughly a change a week, think of it that way. In each case, moderated by our results from the experimental trials in the lab, from field studies, and from quantitative logs analysis. So we're really trying to get information about how people behave at these 3 different levels. One of the big challenges for us is we've got all this capability. We want to give you immense power. We've got a computer the size of the planet. But in the end, it's what you notice when you're sitting at home or sitting on your mobile device trying to map your way, in this case, to UC San Diego. So one of the things that you probably didn't notice is that little interactor widget right there, the little blue triangle. It's 10 pixels on a side. Nobody clicked on it, so we dropped that. Nobody clicked on that one either. Now, you might say, well, I could tell you that a priori. Well, the problem is most of what we do is not intuitive. We do these things, we do these alterations in the interface, alterations in the way search happens, and we mostly try to evolve it in ways that seem graceful and simple, but a lot of the results are not intuitive. As an example, in 2007, our advanced search page looked like this. You've used advanced search? How many people have used advanced search? Oh, I'm in an illiterate crowd, this is great. So you probably remember this, right? 2007, and what happened is I was on a field study, and the woman I was interviewing on a hot August evening got to this page and said, I hate this. That's literally what she said, and she hit back. And the reason she hated it is because of stuff like, well, do I fill out all those blanks or just one? How about this one, usage rights? Oh my gosh, usage rights? Do I need usage rights to do the search? What about numeric range occurrences? Now, those of you in the know would realize those are actually 2 different line items, not one line item. She perceived it as one gestalt, numeric range occurrences. Okay? Lots of problems with this. So we changed the UI because we had an 80% bounce rate. That means people were coming to the page and exiting under 5 seconds. That was not a good result. So we did very simple UI redesign based on that, and we basically doubled, or rather, we improved the use of that page by simple UI redesign by a factor of 2. Fantastic. Now, one of the things that I'm really interested in is how people get their job done, how they answer their information need. Now, if you were here last year, you probably remember this example. One of the key things that you probably all, well, let me test the audience first. How many of you know how to, when confronted with a page like that, find my name on that page? Do you know the mechanism? Raise your hand. Okay, most of you do. Okay, you would use Control F, right? Or Command F if you're a Mac person, right? Okay, here's the really frightening, scary result. If you just sample this population, I'd say it was 99% of you know that, right? I know there are a few of you who actually don't. It's okay. Use Control F, ask your buddy next to you, okay? When I did a survey of a couple thousand people in the US, I found out that 90% of English internet users do not know that. They do not know how to find a word on a page, okay? Now, for you, it's a trivial operation. You want to show that a word is on a page or is not on the page, you do Control F, right? Imagine living in a world where you can't do that. It qualitatively changes your electronic reading experience, right? I bring up Moby Dick, I can find every instance of Ahab in that book like that. A person who doesn't know this cannot. Their reading and my reading are different, okay? Even scarier, 50% of US teachers do not know this. That is, the teachers teaching our kids don't know how to find content on a page, okay? So what's really interesting, I think, about all this is how people use the stuff that we give them. So for example, you're all, I assume, expert searchers. Can you find a picture of Britney Spears? Sure. Can you find a picture of Rula Lenska? Yes? Do you know who Rula Lenska is? People above a certain age know, right? Okay. How about a picture of your grandmother? Yes, no. Yes? Yeah. Picture of my grandmother? My grandmother. Right, right. How about a video of Ted Williams hitting a home run? Sure, right, you can, okay. How about a picture of my grandmother hitting a home run? Right. This is funny, and in particular, I want to show you a really beautiful video clip of a guy trying to figure out what to do over the weekend. In theory, this video will run. There we go. So what the challenge here is to try to figure out what to do.
Yeah, I want to try one last thing.
Okay.
Activity thing.
Okay.
I'll see what happens. Activities for kids. Oh, see? They're not giving me a chance, man. They're all for kids. No wonder I couldn't find. So I should type adult. Activities. See? That's what I mean. So it's really hard to search for these activities.
I love this example because the next query was adult activities San Francisco Saturday night. I do not show you that video. Now, this is funny. Why? Because you know there are potentially not safe for work and particularly not safe for conference results that might show up there. He does not. Wait a second. He doesn't know that a big chunk of the web is out there, and he's going to trigger it by doing this, right? So remember the question about my grandmother hitting a home run? How did you know that? How did you know? Because you have a pretty good model of what's in the library. Oh, excuse me, what's on the web. You already know a lot, right? You have some fairly deep knowledge about these things. And this guy just did not. Okay? So part of the problem is we have been massively successful, we as a field. Google has all these different properties. Microsoft has a lot of properties. Twitter is massively successful with all its product offerings, right? Name your favorite large company. And we're so good that we are accelerating the evolution and the production of all the new kinds of stuff. The problem is, what if you didn't know about porn? What if you didn't know about, for example, that you can find calendars on the web? What if you didn't know that you could find books on the web? Question for you. What do you not know? What do you not know is possible to find? We can find books. What's the interface for books? How should we design that? We have decades of practice. Each of us has decades of practice using this form factor. How do I translate that into that form factor? What do I have to do? What do I do with a product like Google Earth, where you can move in 3 dimensions and you can tilt and rotate and roll and do all this stuff? You can layer on models of buildings. I can download the White House and project it onto Google Earth. What's the interface design for that? How would I know? So combining all this together, I think we face as a field some interesting challenges for the future of information. The challenges are, I think the first one is literacy. For the first world literacy, it's how to use and understand the capabilities that we're giving to you. Okay? For the third world, how will it change as increasing billions of people come onto the internet who may or may not be literate in even their primary language, let alone our primary language? Right? Remember when AOL people came onto the internet? Any of you remember that? It changed the texture of the internet in an interesting way. This is going to happen again. That's challenge number one. Challenge number two is the implication of being literate about what's possible to do on the web and so on, is when you're not part of the internet, that becomes even more of an issue. Suppose you're actually not a Twitter fan, you actually don't ever look at Twitter, you're missing out on a fraction of our shared information experience. Another huge problem, I think, is abuse. In particular, as we allow more billions of people to come onto the internet, there's increased opportunity for spam and malware, phishing, and trolls. Let me ask you a quick question. How many of you in the internet context know what a troll is? Raise your hand. Okay. Most people don't. Most people have no idea that trolls exist or what they're doing. And lastly, I got a little timer up here. I said it. It was actually flashing 12 when I walked up here, but I fixed it for you. The last one here, the unexpected challenge, is unexpected interactions. As we start to develop more and more kinds of tools and more levels of interaction, what is it we're building out that we're not expecting? And how will this change our collective experience? Last slide. Okay. I think there's a huge, huge set of opportunities for us here. As we increasingly add more people, we're going to add increasing kinds of content. More kinds of stuff is going to come online. We'll have new capabilities, new content, new genres evolving. We will then expand our range of opportunities as we have new ways for people to get access to that information and deal with it. That is, they want to recombine it, they want to analyze it, they want to solve their information need. And so I want to point out that the underlying technology is changing at an incredible rate. That's kind of why we're here, right? What you now know will stale out very, very quickly. All of us, me, Mary, Abdur, everybody here. You have got to take on this challenge for yourself of becoming literate in your own information technology. You've got to be able to be a good researcher. And on this theme of being at the edge of the interaction between people and technology, I'll tell you one last story, which is I taught a class of 4th graders in Foster City, which is a wonderfully diverse community. 30 kids, 30 languages spoken at home, that kind of diversity. And I taught them, because they were so linguistically diverse, I taught them how to use Google Translate. And since it was 4th graders, 2 weeks later, I got a packet in the mail like this. All the thank you letters from all the kids. And one was really great because it was a letter from Armando, little boy, who said, "Thank you for teaching me how to use Google Translate because now I can write to my grandmother." You see, his parents don't want him to know Spanish. It's viewed as déclassé. It's moving the wrong way in the ladder of social hierarchy. They don't want him to know that. But he still wants to write to grandma in Honduras. So with Google Translate, he can do that. And I think that's a nice example of the way technology provides new affordances, new possibilities for all of us to think about information and our personal relationships in a very, very different way. Thank you.
So Dan, what's the question you have for everyone? How to make your technology?
No. This screws right now. There we go. The question I would have for everyone would be, there's a very pragmatic one, which is, how are you planning to be more information literate next year than this? What are you doing to do personal development, to make yourself a smarter and better consumer of information on the web?
So we have microphones here if some brave soul wants to take a shot at that while we're getting ready for
Yeah, we turn on the
Mary's talk.
slides. Okay, who wants to answer? We've got the microphone.
And there's a mic in the...
Yes.
No brave souls? Oh, come on. This is an academic institution. There are no wrong answers.
We're going to pick people if you...
We're going to call on somebody really soon.
We got someone right there.
Okay.
John, go for it.
Well, I would say one thing I'm doing is, okay, is this working?
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that I do is I have two sons. One is 22 and one is 18. My 18-year-old is studying game art, so he's really technology savvy. And I talk to them, and I talk to my students, and I ask them what's new and what are you doing, and you know, how could I possibly use it in my work as an educator?
Right. So children as an education change agent for you. It works for you. It's great. And actually, the fact that you're here is a positive comment on that. It's fantastic. I applaud all of you for that. What do the other 99.999% of Maryland do?
What are you doing?
Dan is saying you can't get through the rest of your lives unless you're constantly thinking about what's out there that you don't know about, that you're constantly teaching yourself how to search. So how are you doing it? Help us. Tell us how you're doing it.
Wait,
Who's got a great idea?
Take it right here. Oh, you have a question for the question?
A meta question.
There's only so much that we can do as individuals. So the question is, what does academia or school system or the enterprise does to facilitate that
yeah.
kind of literacy? And what is the responsibility
Yeah.
of those organizations?
That's an excellent meta question. I like it. And so I'm going to go meta on your meta, which is, so what's the University of Maryland doing to teach students how to do research? And I hope there's an answer for that.
There's an answer right over there. What do you...
Yes, see on this one.
Yes, here we go. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be convenient? I actually teach research as an humanities. And my problem is I don't know what my students don't know. So I'm constantly trying to find out what they don't know about search. Some of what you showed me didn't surprise me because an undergraduate student is not that far ahead of the general public on using search intelligently. So, but I don't know how I find out what my students don't know. I'm hoping that you've done, for example, the same kind of iMotion studies on Google Scholar.
I haven't, but that's okay.
Well,
I can.
I can't do that. I'm a costume historian.
Okay. Actually, have you read the Ariel report, ERIAL report? It's an ethnographic report done by a group of colleges that begin with I. And I can't remember all of them. It's like Iowa and so on. Anyway, it's a really nice example. I've got a nice book on it. I'm going to get the title wrong. Hey, anybody have Google? You could look it up. Anyway, you could look it up and check. You've got a phone, you can look it up. ERIAL library, that's all you need.
There's a bit of a recursive answer to that question that you initially asked, in that when I'm looking for new ways to do research, I often Google how to do research. And I feel like this is something that you might want to take into account.
Yep. Well, I teach a lot of classes. I teach on how to do research. So I teach probably 1 or maybe 2 a week. I think I taught I taught like 100 classes last year on this. So we're doing, I think a lot of the big companies are doing things like this. And there's certainly our vendors out there willing to teach you for a little bit of money, right? So there's a big need, I think. And the surprising thing about the Ariel report, I think, is that the net of that report is our students are not learning how to do research in humanities or technology. Now, one of the things that comes out of that is that people learn by watching over the shoulder from other people. They get the good, the bad, and the indifferent. One of the things I'm fascinated about right now are internet search superstitions. And one of the things that's great is I can look in the logs and find operators that people use that never have existed. And I don't know where they get this from, right? And so it's fascinating to see sort of strange behaviors.
Well, with that, speaking of strange behaviors, let's thank Dan Russell. Chewinski.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here, and thanks to everyone who put this together. It seems like such a large group of people bringing all of you here, so it's a great opportunity. I hope to learn as much as you all do. I'm going to talk today about the future of human-computer interaction. That's what my research group does. I'm a cognitive psychologist, as Allison told you, so I have a slightly different bent. I'm not a computer scientist, although we have a very multidisciplinary group with designers, sociologists, psychologists, and computer scientists all working together to try to reinvent the future. And I went to some slides. Why am I not progressing here? I went to some slides that actually Ben Peterson and I were on a panel for the 20-year celebration of the Human-Computer Interaction Lab at Carnegie Mellon. And I went back to those 2006 slides to see kind of like how far have we come since 2006. And much to my delight, actually, a lot of the stuff that we had predicted might be happening in the future is happening. And so I'm actually starting from these slides from 2006 and expanding on them. Obviously, you know, back in 2006, large displays were a big topic. We're going to have displays everywhere, you know, multiple monitors. You're going to be sitting in front of, you know, a flight deck, basically. And that's kind of happened. We do have more displays on walls now, and they are bigger, and we are able to show really interesting things with these large displays. They've been a great enabler of new software designs, actually. And, you know, we said there were going to be ubiquitous sensors everywhere. Well, you know, I've got my Fitbit on here. I track myself every day. I used to wear the body media, but that was a little bit too big, and I was allergic to the nickel. Fitbit is much nicer. So maybe that is coming, and you know, you've got GPS in your phone, and so sensors are starting to become ubiquitous after all. I talked about wearables and implantables, you know, that we'd have, you know, biochips in our wrists. That's not quite here yet, but I do think that will come, making us better and storing information in maybe a more easy-to-use way. Enough storage for a lifetime of data. I think it's easy to say that that's actually here. Power salvaging. So a lot of research is going on right now to detect what activities you're doing on your phone. So if you're not using your phone, you know, in a way that's really power hungry, you can shut it down and save the battery. So there's a lot of new innovation in that space. I love this one because new materials. I don't even know what I was thinking when I wrote that, but in fact, the designer in my group is working on computational materials and putting computers in your clothing. And can we do things to you to notify you or to, you know, show you when you're stressed by the color of your clothing and stuff like that. And she's actually making a lot of progress. I don't know if any of you have seen the new T-shirts you can wear that get your heart rate and collect, you know, your galvanic skin response, for instance. So I think it's fair to say this stuff is coming. I know hospitals now are having patients wear some of these new T-shirts. And then access to personal bits anywhere, anytime. Well, I believe Allison put all our talks in Dropbox. I think we kind of do have access to anything most of the time if we can find it, right, Dan? Okay, so I just thought I'd collect some of this stuff that's out on the web. You know, there are a lot of products now that you can wear and get your EEG signal and collect that. You know, collect that every day if you want, or collect that while you're using particular programs. Researchers can use that to study how easy software is. There's the emotive device, the Affectiva device, that collects your galvanic skin response. I've been wearing that every day for many, many weeks, and it's very accurate. It actually really shows when I'm aroused and interested and when I'm really, really bored. And then I can go back to my file tracker and look and see at my logger, what have I been doing that got me so aroused and made me so bored? And that's very fascinating. Down below, I have a series of input and output innovations invented by Desney Chan and his team, where, you know, projectors now can project to your body. They're getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Maybe you just, instead of using a phone, you just tap on your hand to enter that phone number. They actually got this little device that you put in your mouth. It's kind of like a retainer. They actually got that to the point where Greg in our group, who's in a wheelchair, could actually steer his wheelchair with his tongue. Tongue's actually really strong and quite movable. So there are lots of innovations there. They've been working on displays that you can wear as kind of like contact lenses. They call them bionic lenses. And that technology is moving along at a rapid pace, so stuff could be projected into your eye for you. And they've done a series of things looking at bioacoustics of your arm as you tap them, wearing wireless armbands. Also detecting which muscles you use in your fingers, and that can be sent to your computer, maybe definitely in a wireless way. And so really new novel input and output techniques are being invented every day. It's actually kind of hard to keep up. And at Microsoft, in 2007, we actually talked about, the Surface computer was going to change everything. And then in 2009, Natal was invented, which is the Kinect, as you may know it as a commercial product, where many, many research labs worked together with the Xbox team to invent you are the controller, right? So you just use your body. How many people have used the Kinect? Yeah, okay. Well, it's enabled a lot of really cool new things I'll talk about in just a minute. And then we have a designer in my group, as I said, who's really interested in fabric. And she invented this new way of, she calls this the printing dress, a takeoff on the printing press. And you are what you tweet. So basically, you can't see the bodice of the dress in this particular picture, but there's a keyboard on the bodice of the dress. And as you tweet, it actually works. There's a projection of what you're tweeting that comes up on your skirt. And she won Best of Show at Wearables and a Most Creative Award for this dress. It's quite beautiful, but now she's doing really much more innovative and advanced things with this. So, bottom line is, there's a lot of hardware out there that's really influencing a ton of change, and it's coming. The move, I don't know, how many of you know the quantified self movement? A few, not too many. Okay, the quantified self movement is a movement of people out there, I think I'm one of them, that really believes in logging themselves, wearing sensors and logging themselves. And they do this for the purposes of not only tracking their lives, but improving their lives. That's the idea behind this. You should be healthier and happier. And so the sensors are here. You have these people now who are wearing headbands and all kinds of different stuff. But we need the software in order to actually make sense of all this data. So we're going to be collecting tons of data about ourselves and logging everything we do, logging everything our body does. And without machine learning, there's just no way to make sense of all these streams of data. So we have the databases now that are capable of collecting this data. We can get access to it anywhere, anyhow. But really now the challenge for my group, I see it as information visualization of all this data. How do you access it? How do you make sense of it? How do you present it to the user in a very aesthetically pleasing and easy to use way? And so we spend a lot of our time on that. One of the things that I will say is a challenge is there are different ways of presenting this data if you're talking about a personal presentation to myself for reflection versus the kind of data that you might want to share with someone, like let's say a very small private group of your loved ones or your doctor or your healthcare professionals, things like that. So there's a very different take on how abstract you want to go. And now I think, with the advent of social software and the ability for us to collaborate effectively in editing documents, in creating world knowledge, in developing new tools, this is a really great opportunity, and so I see this as one of the key influencers as well. So, what are some of the scenarios? Obviously, if we invent anything in these spaces, much as Dan was great to show you, you need to do user-centered design, right? So we need to study at the various levels that Dan was talking about how easy these things are to use. But let's say you get prototypes for like healthcare. So the first thing we're working on right now is actually something to help with mental health. So we have a bunch of sensor data, we have Connect data, so we see how far you're leaning into your computer, if your face is smiling or not smiling. We can do the prosody of your speech. Are you really talking very fast and anxiously, or are you talking kind of slow and calmly? So we can look at all these sensor streams and put together a story about you and your state of being, which is great. And we can show that back to you. We can even show it to you in a beautiful visualization that helps you make sense of how you spent your last week, because you probably don't remember a lot of what happened. If it's today, you might not remember 2 days ago. And so that's great. We can do this for health, and we do user studies to make sure that this is, private enough and sensitive enough and yet easy to understand. And some of the things we've thought about are, road rage detectors. Like if we have this in the car, can we tell that you're getting really stressed out and do something soothing or calming, or at least remind you to take a deep breath, something like that. There's all kinds of possibilities now that we have all this sensor data and we have the ability to summarize it and make sense of it. I think it's really important that we use some of these tools to personalize user interfaces for people. As Dan pointed out, not everybody is at the same level of expertise as everybody else, and there are some things that you're just frankly more interested in than others, and we can, proffer those up to you and save you time in your searching and making sense of your own sensor streams. One of the things we've been really interested in my group is using this information for improving and prioritizing work for work groups. Again, this gets very sensitive because how do you show information you know about your individual co-workers and what they're working on in a way that's private, sensitive, and yet really helps the whole team function better? Privacy is an issue throughout everything we're doing these days in my research group. And my question to all of you, I'm jumping the gun, Allison, is what are you all doing with us to help make sure that these logs and these visualizations of all this information actually are treated sensitively and privacy is secured? That's a really, really tough problem. And the last thing I put in here is it should be that if you can track user emotion and frustration and stress, and we can you use it to improve teaching? And so that's another opportunity for all of you out here that are in the educational domain. If you could detect if your students were stressed out or frustrated, what would you do about that? How would you handle that? And how would you want that information displayed to you? We actually did a project on trying to teach 5th and 6th graders how to search better. And we used large displays, going back to these hardware opportunities, to show the teacher and the rest of the kids in the room who was searching for what. So basically a big tag cloud of the words they were using, a big tag cloud of the URLs that they were going to. And this allowed the teacher very quickly to see what kids were doing. Of course, the first thing kids do is they try to get their name up there as big as they possibly can. And they usurp the technology for their own delight. But the teacher was able to actually go in and then look at individual students. What are individual students doing? Oh, this individual student has really, they're on a good run searching for this information. Let's show everyone else what this student's doing. And the students really used this. It was amazing to watch in the actual class where they were teaching about search, how this tool was enlightening them, and they were leveraging. They would see new keywords that they hadn't thought of before, and they would use them themselves. So I think there's just tons of opportunity for using this kind of software, using large displays, using logs and trackers, still maintaining privacy and being sensitive to improve the classroom opportunity. Oops, I think I went too fast. How do I go back? This mouse is not working. Somebody? Okay, I hope that's the same. Okay, so what are the implications of all this? We're going to have more self-awareness. We really are going to have fantastic tools for reflection. We really are trying to build these things so that you can personally learn about the events in your life and which events are really positive and helpful and important to you and which events maybe aren't so good. And maybe you can learn from these reflection user interfaces. Or maybe there are things we can do in real time that you can show to your loved ones or your healthcare professionals that really help you get better help, or at least allow your social network to intervene and help you. So these self-awareness tools can be built at multiple scales, right? There can be the personal self-reflection tools for you, but also at the enterprise scale. So one of the things I joke with, and I have a slide on in a minute, is Microsoft spends, and I'm sure every large corporation like Google spends billions of dollars on making sure that your workforce is healthy. Well, there are things we can do right now that would save a ton of money, but at what level are people willing to share this information? It's an important question. And the idea would be we'll have more free time if we can learn all this stuff and see all this stuff. Or maybe with that free time, what we'll recognize is that there are better things we could be doing, more healthy things, more positive things, better ways to spend our time. But there's a dark side. And again, this has some questions for all of you. Corporations, all big corporations now, know a lot about what you do with their software. And they use that. Actually, they use that to personalize the software for you. But they also use that for other reasons, to serve up better ads, to give you better experiences, and it really influences your experience of how you consume information. They're making it malleable based on your behaviors. And we have to ask ourselves as a society, how comfortable are we with large organizations and small organizations, any product actually that's logging you, shaping your experience on the web? Are we okay with that as a society? Or would we prefer to be in charge of that? And what kind of tools can we work on as a community to give people more control over how they consume information? And, how will we protect users' privacy? This is just something that's really bothering me right now. How do we keep the data secure? And, is it going to be that sci-fi-ish kind of situation where at some point we're not okay with this and we just have to jump off the grid? I already know people who, they just turned off Facebook, turned off Twitter, just don't want it anymore. And, I would hope that we don't have to get to that point. I would hope that as a society and a government and a policy-making situation that we really protect users and give users more control. And that's part of the user experience. It's part of making the user experience better. So I'm going to leave you all with those questions, the dark side, and open it up for questions. Thank you.
Okay, how to answer Mary's questions. She had more questions than one. You can pick any of them that you want, the dark side or the bright side. Okay, over here.
You're not seeing.
So my name is Irene. Thank you, Mary, for this talk. I'm going to pick the dark side.
Okay.
I think it's very interesting, this challenge about privacy. And I feel that there's a huge difference between cultures, the perception of privacy and coming from Europe, I can tell that in Europe there's a huge concern, much bigger than America
Yes.
about that. And definitely people are really decided to not use certain tools because of that. So I think it's how a company that deals with these issues is going to manage their privacy policy at a global scale. That's a big thing, considering the whole world.
So can you repeat your question?
Well, the question would be how a company that is, aiming for a global scale,
Right.
how they approach these privacy concerns.
Right.
There's a huge variations
Right.
across countries.
Well, I can only speak to what I know, which is Microsoft, and I know that we take privacy really, really seriously, and we're very open about what is shared and what isn't shared, and what we're logging and what we're not logging. But you have to comply with every government you work with when you sell software in their country. And so I know, for instance, Germany has probably some of the strongest privacy policies in place of anywhere globally. And I know that we have to, conform to whatever that government, demands. And so it's a challenge. We have huge numbers of people working on privacy issues, and we take it very, very seriously. But I think, let's use the example of Facebook, because Mark Zuckerberg has talked about this a lot. They have, I think, iterated very well to give the user some control over what people can see and what people can't see. So now there are user interface elements in place where I can go in and say, no, I don't want to allow access to my personal data by this application. Yes, I will allow this one access. So I think having more tools like that, hopefully understandable tools, so users can see. I would prefer a tool that actually said, and I think Facebook just did implement this one too, let me see myself the way other people see me. Let me see myself the way the government sees me. Let me see myself the way University of Maryland sees me. Let me see myself the way Microsoft sees me. I really like those kinds of tools because I think they're easier for users to understand.
There's one question back here.
With the Kinect, Microsoft made a decision, I think, to bring people who were hacking the device and using it in kind of cool new ways into the tent instead of cracking down on them as some other companies have. Can you just talk about how important that's been for advancing the technology and figuring out kind of new ways to use it and what can be done with it?
Yeah, great question. I'm not part of the Connect team, so I can't even begin to tell you how many wonderful ways that's helped Microsoft, but I know it has. One of the things we did in Microsoft Research was we actually built an SDK that opened up the Connect to the academic community. And there have been so many cool projects that have emerged from that. And we've learned so many different ways that people use the Connect information that we probably would never have thought of as a corporation. So in terms of innovation, you know, opening up access to that it was very, very important. And I think people using Connect in the classroom have seen a huge amount of engagement. I've talked to professors who said, you know, it's really changed the atmosphere in the classroom around technology. I also know a professor at University of Washington who's using Connect to help autistic children. And for some reason, the Connect allows them to really interact with computers in a different way and maybe a much better way and have more fun than they were able to do with the mouse and keyboard. So I think they're just like fantastic new opportunities when you open it up to a community like that. Thank you.
Okay, all right, I see one more right there. So one short comment and question, and then we'll move on to Adler.
This may not be short, I'm sorry, but we can talk about it later if you want. I'm from National Geographic, so we are publishers. We put out films. We're used to working with copyright, ownership, authors' rights. And when I look at the user-generated content world, who, not just beyond the privacy, but who owns the information that is being entered? Can I delete? I cannot delete things I've added to Facebook, despite whether or not anybody can use that information. That the law is so murky in this area, and I was wondering if you could comment on that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. my short, brief comment is, this is what I'm worried about, is our experiences are being shaped by organizations who are collecting data about us in ways that we don't have control over, and that worries me. So I am opening it up to all of you as this community of this future of information to work with me on giving users control, at least the ability to see where there might be an issue. I think that's the first start. And then I hope policy-wise, I know there are policy people in the room, that we take this very, very seriously. I know we're a little bit behind, as Dan said. We're always inventing so fast that it's hard for policymakers to keep up. But this is so important that we really need to focus on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. All right, last up, Adler.
No, maybe. Yes, yay.
So you can repeat the comment about the coolest title you've ever.
Futurist, coolest title ever. Let me just start with that. What I'd like to talk about a little bit about today is kind of emergence and where I see some of the technology and what we're going to be doing with it as a society. So the kind of brief history of Abder. Started at University of Maryland, went to IT, started teaching at Georgetown, and was ultimately kind of just impatient with myself, mostly in all the things I was working with on not seeing them implemented or used by other people. And so kind of the natural progression for an academic is to leave academia. And so I went to AOL, became the chief architect for search there, started a company called Surmise, where we worked on three things: real-time search, summarization, and sentiment analysis, of which only one of them anyone cared about. We ended up merging with another company called Twitter because the only product we built that anyone seemed to care about was this thing called Twitter Search. And right now I think it does about 2 billion queries a day, something like that. Since then, I was the chief scientist at Twitter, and I started the analytics group, user recommendation groups, trends groups, and a few others, and I've just kind of left last month to kind of focus on my next project, which was a elementary school focused on STEM education. also called Alta Vista. Of my founders, I'm the only one who was horrified with the name, but I was outvoted. So kind of the world that we live in right now is this world of computing, and this has kind of been like the way we've measured our progress over the last few years is in MIPS, or millions of instructions per second. And about the fastest computer we have out there is around 150,000 MIPS. We have about 1.5 billion computers out there. And what we've found is we could solve all kinds of interesting computer science and problems for humanity. Finding stuff via Google, our phones, being connected, etc. And the way we've solved the complexity problems that we've been trying to get after is a single computer can only do so much, so we've connected them with networks. And any of you that worked in technology, you know that the faster you can talk to another computer, the more processing power you have because of this MIPS thing, and amount of memory you have available to you, and you can solve things faster. And so this is kind of the compute world that if you went to the computer science department here or anywhere else in the country, they would be talking about this types of problems. But if we're going to be talking about the future, really we've kind of seen where this trajectory goes. We've seen Moore's Law, we've seen all these other things. Yes, things are getting faster, things are getting better, but really where's the step function? Where's the thing where we dramatically change the way we're thinking about computing and ability to solve new and interesting problems? And what I'm going to argue today is that I believe that that next evolution is going to be humans in the mix. If we were to sit back and think about humans as a computer in the same kind of like metrics that we were just looking at, well, we're not at 150,000, we're about 3 orders of magnitude, around 100 million MIPS per second. You think about all the neurons that are firing in your brain and what we can actually do, it's quite amazing. Now, what hasn't been there in the past is the ability for all these humans to be connected. Remember, computers by themselves were pretty powerful, they were getting more and more powerful, but it wasn't until we connected them that you really get the true power of all these machines. And so I believe that now that we have these phones and other ways to connect our bodies to this, this is where the real step function is going to occur from. The future. That's not to say that people haven't been going after hard CS problems and bringing people into this mix, and this isn't like new thoughts. Carnegie Mellon had something called the ESP game. I don't know, anyone familiar with that? A few people. It's awesome. It turns out that computers are really bad at object recognition or computer vision in general, but the ESP game allows to show an image to 2 different people. They can tag it. This is a picture of my daughter and a cat. And so you might put girl and cat. And if you can get people to actually agree on it, then they win the little game, and there's a leaderboard and people go after. Well, this is an awesome way of tying human beings into this process with machines to make these hard computer science problems easier. University of Washington has a project called Fold It. Anyone familiar with that? It's a way of going after the AIDS problem by bringing a game-like scenario for human beings to look at amino acids and fold them in various ways to produce various characteristics. Again, using human beings with compute power to solve really hard problems. Probably the best commercial example of this is called MTurk, or Mechanical Turk from Amazon. Everyone heard of that? Yeah, all the grad students that want to run experiments, yes. It's pretty cool. You can go up there and pay people a penny or 2 pennies to do simple tasks as long as you can explain it and put it in the paradigm of Mechanical Turk. So why aren't we solving lots of great problems now that we have this huge body of compute power out there that can solve all these interesting things? And I think that there's a few different reasons. One is that there's always been a small number of human beings. The ESP game, MTurk. If you look at the number of human beings that are actually involved with any one of these, it's pretty small. The second thing is the hardware investment to actually get a computer. If we're thinking about 5 billion human beings with cell phones, 7 billion human beings on the planet. Think about buying a $500 laptop for all those people. I mean, that's an economically difficult challenge. And we'd have to lower that price to get these people really involved. And lastly, I think the biggest reason that people aren't getting involved is that there's really no selfish outcome. There's no real benefit to them. Yes, there's like a small tangible one from a game. There's a small tangible one for making a little bit of money. But ultimately, there's no selfish like all of a sudden my food supply got better, poverty went away, hunger went away, a war and famine and all these other problems went away. There's no real desire for people to become involved with these things. And so I really think that the reason people are now going to be tied into these networks is the human being has fundamentally changed. How many in the audience have a cell phone right now? Okay. How many don't? It's one dude. Left it at home? He's off the grid, sorry. Never mind. So more and more of us are connected to all this information abilities. And the second thing is like people are now have new abilities with these phones. We can text, we can take videos, pictures. The phone has become the sensor of our lives. There's GPS, accelerometers, and more sensors added to these phones every day that now can actually implicitly come into these networks to solve new and interesting problems. And so I like to think about like the cyborg of the future is here, and it's just a little more human than we thought. Check this out. This is an iPad. I can hold a little laser pointer. Yes. So the cyborg of the future turns out to be our mom, and she can take pictures, access the internet, and do all kinds of interesting stuff. So really, what are we going to be doing with all this kind of social computing? And I think that there's going to be three phases. The first two are occurring now, and the third is where I see the future actually occurring. The first one is we all become sensors. You see it with Twitter. You see it with all kinds of other things. With this phone, we become a sensor of taking pictures, essentially summarizing our life in a picture, or sending out a quick text and telling others what's going on. Phase two is awareness. This kind of sharing of information in a free and open way is going to allow us to become more and more aware of the world in which we live and what's important, which is the only way that what I call emergence will occur. And that's our compassion to work on large problems with other people in a collaborative way. So at Twitter, we built a product called Trends. Trends monitors the world's tweets and pulls out the people, places, and things, and then tries to find the most interesting or unexpected one and show them to other people. 3 years ago, I was traveling back to DC, and I woke up on Thanksgiving morning, and I was checking out the trends to make sure that they were working okay. And instead of seeing stuff about Thanksgiving or turkey or full or football, I saw Mumbai. And what all of a sudden I realized was there was something really important going on in Mumbai, and I should pay attention. And of course, there was the bombing occurring. But over the years, like this same like pattern keeps emerging because we're all sensors. A few years ago, a guy's taking a ferry ride across the Hudson, and all of a sudden a plane lands in the river next to him. Like, he was the sensor. He became the sensor. He took a picture, sent it out. All of a sudden, the world's news agencies and all the people become aware of it. The Bay Bridge in San Francisco, one day when I was talking to Ev, one of the founders of Twitter, I was just like, I don't know if we should do this local trends. We pulled it up, and all of a sudden we could see Bay Bridge. We clicked on it, and this is the picture we saw right here of cables. Cables actually falling and people getting stuck on the bridge. Now, it hasn't been always about late-breaking news. There's a project out of Microsoft called Photosynth. Is anyone familiar with that? It's really amazing. So everyone takes a picture of it at an event, and they stitch all the photos to build a 3D model and virtual worlds you can travel through. It's really amazing. Here's a picture of like the Obama inauguration. Other examples are Google's Maps. Everyone who pulls out their phone all of a sudden becomes a sensor because the GPS data is sent back, and they can detect where traffic is either slow or fast or going as expected. And so I believe that this first phase of all of us becoming sensors of the world that we care about is occurring right now and as we speak. The next phase, awareness. So how do we really think about the world? How do we share what's important? How do we know what's going on? Earlier this year, there was an earthquake besides Japan at about 9.0 that started one of the largest tsunamis that humans have ever seen. And what we're going to watch now is how that information of the event spread through the planet. Let's start here. Hold on. Whoop. Can you guys see that? In pink, what we're watching is tweets coming out of Japan. And in green, it's people sharing that information. And this is no longer the CNN of, hey, an earthquake occurred or a tsunami occurred. This is, I'm okay, or my house just, blew away, or many other things. And so what we watched was how information was disseminated in just 1 hour over the entire planet. And it was no longer just CNN starting the news, but all the people on the ground and how that information disseminated through the planet. In fact, if you look at it, you can kind of see an outline of all the continents, except for Africa. And I kind of think of it as power. Where is power on the planet? And you can kind of just see it. Siberia, not a lot of power up there, not a lot of people. But it's pretty impressive. The next way I think that we're going to become more aware, and hopefully you can see it from this, is it's no longer about just sharing what happened, but it's about reaching out to others when they need help and when things are going on. And what we're going to watch is a few minutes before the tsunami occurred and a few minutes after, and their personal messages in and out of the country and where they originated. So in yellow, messages coming out. In pink, can you guys see it in the back? Messages coming in, tsunami hits, and it's just a flood of messages coming in and out. And the main reason is that this awareness, this global awareness of what's going on is so instantaneous that the natural next progression of humans is to reach out to the friends and family or coworkers or anyone they know and say, are you okay? What's going on? How can we help? And so I'm going to leave you with this emergence, because this awareness, the sensors, and this is only going to stir one thing in my mind, and that's compassion of others on the planet and understanding what their problems are and what way we can harness ourselves and emerge and self-organize to solve problems of importance. And so my question and challenge really to everyone in this audience that's going to be really working on the future is, how do we actually use this technology to bring people together in ways that can facilitate solving real problems? Not just, oh my goodness, how do I get a pizza fast? But really, how do we actually solve problems like poverty and injustices of the world?
Thank you. How do we solve this? What do you think? How do we do it? How do we do it? Oh, over here. John, right there. That's in your territory.
She had an answer pretty fast. I'm a little skeptical.
Only because I've been working in the area for a while. I'm a professor in journalism and public policy. And I was going to speak to Dave Russell when he was speaking, but I think one of the answers is what he was suggesting, which is media literacy and news literacy and information literacy. I think you showed the data viz of people's instinctual interest in helping and caring, and you could show other data viz that showed micropayments, Kiva, and so forth in terms of people helping. If you can, pull together similar kinds of technology innovations, whether it's an Ushahidi,
or whether it's Freedom Phone or other kinds of technological solutions, a lot of them about connecting people who have information to those who need information.
Wonderful. Anybody else?
We have a comment over here.
Hi guys, I'm from American Studies, so I'm usually on the Human Rights Watch for events like these. And I'm glad you mentioned Ushahidi. That was the example I was thinking of. And I think to encourage emergence, to be really serious about it, supporting the open source movement is a big deal. I think a lot of the power for Ushahidi in Japan was that you were able to take something that was originally an English interface or a Kenyan interface and make it a Japanese interface. If we're really serious about emergence, the tools have to be opened up to everybody.
I like this. I don't have to do anything. I just,
Yeah, you're doing a great job
this
there.
is awesome.
Oh, there's another one right here.
I think we should provide more free access to the internet worldwide. Even no matter how wonderful the computer technology will be, for the hungry people, for the poor people, if they don't have access to that technology, how could they use or take advantage of those information on the internet? So I think like the public library we have here, we provide free access to the internet. That's the way to solve one of the problem here.
So really it should be like power, water, internet?
It's sort of information, sort of what Patrick was saying at the beginning. Yeah, there you go. One last comment, and then we're going to bring the three futurists back here, up here, to have a full conversation with each other as well as us. Any other comments? All right. Thank you, Abdur.
Awesome.
So while we're getting our futurists up here, Alice and I are decided we're going to give up our moderator's right to ask questions and just turn it over to you. Remember that one of the things we're trying to do this week is by the end of the week come up with some major challenges that can then be addressed by research. So keep that in mind when you're asking your questions or making your comments. Lots of mics around the room.
Okay, and you can also tweet your questions and we'll find it. First question over here.
Hi, this question is for Mary to start, but probably the whole group. But you mentioned the dark side first, so we'll start with you. And you mentioned that policy is often too late a tool to address some of these issues, and I agree with you. It comes 10 years down the road. And so what do you do in your group, in your design practice, to make social issues part of the discussion, some of these dark side issues part of your discussion?
Great question. Because we're doing some experimentation right now around things like emotion, like your emotional health, we design tools and use them ourselves. Trust me, we've done some group awareness tools where immediately I shut the system down because it was uncomfortable for my manager to be seeing this stuff that I'm doing, okay? So we always try them on ourselves first as a prototype. If it passes my inner group bar, meaning my own little team feels okay, we'll invite other researchers around us to use the tool too. If it passes that bar, we'll go, ooh, I wonder if we could have, hundreds of people in Microsoft try this out. If it passes that bar, we might then invoke a bunch of volunteers from our usability database to try it out. So we do it in layers very carefully because not only does the system have to be really workable and robust and usable, but we're dealing with sensitive stuff. So we always do user-centered design. We always bring in users and test things out on real users, or we go to their homes and test them out. And if it passes certain bars, then we're okay with it. Obviously, we also publish papers and get the community talking about this stuff as well. So great question.
Dan or Abdur, do you have any other thoughts about what you might do?
Yeah, one of the things about doing testing like this is it's important to do exactly that, as Mary said. It's also important to sort of take on the role of the evil guy. I'll tell you a small story. In '97, in my group, we built a tool that would crawl through the Apple internal network and allow you to index content we found. Very, enterprise search engine, basically. So we built that, and it ran under one of my guys' desks. That was great. And we did it to our group, and it was great. Our group loved it. We did it, rolled it out to our lab, and our lab loved it. It was great. And then one day, on Friday, I remember this at noon, we turned it on to all of Apple. And about 3 o'clock that afternoon, security called me and said, you have to turn that off. Because, and this is something none of us in the lab or in my group had thought about, which was to look for documents labeled secure and private. Yeah. Oh yeah. So we had to, when we do these things, we have to sort of role play what it means to be an evil actor in that world so we can see the ways in which these things can go bad. So that's an aspect of user testing as well.
Yeah, I think if you don't prototype these things and try them out, you won't see what the issues really are, and that's the danger. So we try to push the edge of privacy by developing these tools and seeing what is actually comfortable and useful and reflective and revealing without going too far.
Okay, other questions?
Abder? You.
Or Abder, you know?
I think there's a part of education for the users that's not always addressed. So the reason all these companies are going after these things is they believe that they're building something that's fundamentally valuable to the consumer. Right? They're not just going after your privacy or this because it's fun to do. They actually think that they're trying to build something useful. And users don't always really understand what data they're making available and how it's being used to make their life better. You know, if you go to most users and says, look, Google looks at your searches and tries to make the results better for you, they're not so upset. Oh, my goodness, there's an evil corporation that's looking what you're doing on the internet. And now all of a sudden they become afraid. The second thing is I think we really need to solve these problems with public policy. These aren't technology problems. These end up being policy problems of what happens with the data and how it affects you when it's used incorrectly. And so your fear of like the insurance companies because they're going to use it against you. Your fear of the government or some other corporations that are going to use the information against you. And these are policy and law problems, not necessarily technology problems. And the only way to get at that is it's a long, slow process of educating of users, educating of the society, and educating of people in general.
Okay, we have a question over back there.
Hi, my question is concerning, I guess, the balance that all of you have been talking about, and to an extent, the fact that you're companies and you're not necessarily policymakers and you're trying to balance this, I guess, social justice and balance between maybe right and wrong a little bit when you're thinking about maybe educational values, controlling your anger impulses when you're getting road rage in your car or something like that. Or the thing that popped up for me as an educator was the Google translation when the parents didn't necessarily want the student to speak Spanish. I guess it was Spanish to talk at home, but at the same time, isn't it important also to be bilingual and to be able to communicate in multiple different ways? So I guess what is a way to balance out all of those different capabilities so that people are still improving while at the same time considering, you know, the policy and I guess what's kind of behind all of that if you're influencing people and trying to improve people, but you're not necessarily saying this is the right way to do things or the wrong way to do things, or it's okay to use the translation, but you also want to be bilingual or multilingual at the same time. I don't know if I'm asking this question accurately.
Great question, discussion. Yes, go for it, any part of it.
Sure. As Abdur was saying, we're, you know, from the company side, we're trying to develop new technology that does various good things for the world. We're, aside from black hat, you know, spam guys, most companies, especially us, are actually trying to enhance the world. And so I like Abdur's point about, you know, it's possible that tweeting will allow people to understand what other people are doing and enhance compassion in the world. I think that's true for Google Translate, because now I can start to read documents in Japanese that I couldn't read before, and so on, right? Now, there's an evil side, evil twin to all these things as well. One of the things to realize about technology and futurism is that it's incredibly difficult to see how these things will interact and how people will use them in ways that you hadn't anticipated. As a technology developer, I love it when I see people using things that I've built in ways that I hadn't anticipated. There's a dark side to that as well, right? So I think one of the hard things for policy people in creating these policy agreements and policy standards for the use of information is to anticipate what's possible. Example, you can take two different data sets and, for example, the ones that were not previously in the same data space, and merge them and fuse them together and actually extract new information that wasn't available in either one of them, okay? Now, do you, as a policy matter, prevent data set 2 from ever becoming public because you had anticipated that fusion? I think that's really tough to do. So, personally, I'm glad I'm not trying to set policy because I don't know what I would do. It's a really tough problem.
I have two words, choice and control. I think you get choices through innovation, and I think we're all in agreement that most of us are innovating to make the world a better place. But your values, whatever company you work for, whoever you are, aren't necessarily aligned with the values of everyone in every culture. So if you give the user control, and this is the challenge for us as innovators, is to do this through the user interface and to do user-centered design and make sure that we've done it properly. But if you give the user control, then they've got the choice. The choice is in their hand. They have the power.
And the consequences of that, right.
All right, so we got a question on the Twitter stream from Jason C. Yep, I'm worried one day we will have Twitter-integrated cars. Can you imagine the tweets on the Beltway?
I think it's already there. Ford has it. It's already there. Your fears have been realized, Jason. That's the good news.
The future has
But they will
arrived.
sound like this.
I think it's your turn.
A lot of times we talk about this, we're talking about it as like we're one individual and we think about privacy is just one space, but I feel like we're a lot of different people, you know, throughout our day. And I didn't really see a lot about who we are when we're at work and what we're willing to share there and what we need to share there to do our job, as opposed to what we're willing to share when we come home. Like I just want an electronic typewriter when I get home. You know, I'm really not interested in being tracked or if Google can help me. But at school and work, I'm really interested in being able to connect with people. So I just wondered what your thoughts on that.
So you have different personas during the day, yeah. So you take on different roles. Yeah, I'm a dad at home, right? And at work, I'm one person. In the morning, before I go to work, I'm another person. Yeah, so interesting question for you. How many people are you? At least 6, okay.
Psychologist in the audience.
Another...
Talk to this man.
Well, no. I think they might actually. How many different cookies do you use during the day?
I mean, cookies?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never really thought about it except for I have different email addresses that I use for different things.
Okay.
So it's all about context awareness, right? And we're getting better and better at taking these streams of information and learning new things about you. Some of the reasons we can do things like emotion tracking now is because of how much context we have about you and your activities. So yes, the systems just need to be aware of your contexts and what you tend to do in those contexts to be more appropriate for you.
All right, so we have a question here from someone who's going to be one of our panelists later in the week.
So I like all these questions about sort of taking different perspectives and having some concern. My concern, and I'm actually having some cognitive dissonance in trying, I want you to try and solve my problems. I am both optimistic, and I'm hearing all the great, wonderful possibilities, and I am concerned, but not because of the concern about privacy, which I have, and not because of concern about digital divide, which hasn't been explicitly raised, but I know people are thinking about it. I am concerned because only 10% of the people know about Control F. And I know from many other contexts that people accept defaults, no matter what they are, no matter how the system is designed, people use it as it is designed. How do we deal with the fact that once we get people access to the technology and once we get free internet to everybody, most people will in fact not develop the expertise that we are all saying we need to teach them, we hope they will. The reality is, I'm pretty much of an optimist, but I'm also a realist, and that for many, many people, they won't develop those technologies, those capacities. I don't think they have the either intellectual or training or social or whatever it is, the capacity to do that. So given that that's not going to happen for a huge amount of the people, how do we balance the deployment throughout the world when we have this massive divide of what people do in practice?
Let me disagree with you.
Please do.
So you're completely wrong, and here's why.
I think we've had this conversation before.
Right. So I think, well, the Control F example is nice because it's an aspect of reading online. Okay? And so we have this technology of print and paper and text, and yet we managed to teach most of the world how to read that, most, at fundamental literacy levels. That's a technology and a training that go together. Okay? As more and more text moves online, I think we have to, as a society, take on the challenge of increasing our investment into those kinds of literacies. It's not going to be optional, I think, in 5 years, 10 years, whenever, to be able to not know how to read online. It's going to be a requirement for all these kinds of skills, for all these kinds of, if you want to be a competent learner, you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to do basic math. You have to be able to do, et cetera, right? So I think it's going to be, the culture will evolve to a point where people will know what a tweet means. They will know all these different kinds of fundamental search literacies or digital literacies in general. And I think if we don't do that, to your digital divide point, I think there's going to be an even bigger divide. Those who can and those who cannot be literate in media, literate in digital content.
I have a completely different opinion, and Dan's wrong.
But is Ben wrong?
I don't know. I think people don't know about Control F is because Control F is a stupid user interface. And I think no one should have to know about Control F. Think about it. Control F, really? So I think when people can actually say, find the word I'm looking for with their own voice, you're not really going to have to teach them that much. So I think that natural user interface movement is really huge here to address your issue. I don't know how far we can take that, so I don't know if you're wrong or not, but I think once we start using speech, I don't think children in 5 to 10 years will ever touch a keyboard again. It's going to be gone. People are going to be videotaping everything, and you're going to learn through video. You might end up reading through video. I mean, I think the future is in new interfaces that can be approached by people who today maybe aren't able to use it.
So Mary, you said videotape. What is a tape?
Video, sorry.
Yeah,
Do you disagree, agree, or disagree and agree with the rest of you?
Yeah, I don't think so, Ben. I think the selfish interest of people is to use whatever tools and technology is going to better their lives. And as long as we're building stuff, they're not going to use Control F because that is stupid, but not as stupid as the VI commands to go forward and back after you've done Control F. So that's even more like crazy.
I should defend myself. I don't think Control F is
I
a good
use
idea.
those. What do you mean, slash and then start?
Yeah. Meta control slash.
So I don't know, Ben. Like people, if they need this access to this information, you're in Africa and you want to know what the rice prices are, or some grain price is, and you can buy a cell phone and someone teaches you, how do I type this in, and you get back information. You're going to do it because it's useful for you. It's going to better your life. You're going to figure it out. And our belief that mankind is not going to do those things is just kind of like defeatist. Like, we just might as well give up right now. Like, people are going to keep evolving and getting better at things.
It's very hopeful.
Well, Ben is an optimist as well.
I'm Vic Corman.
Right up to the mic to your mouth.
Vic Corman, emeritus professor. But one of the things we've been hearing is that you folks are knowing all sorts of information about us. And maybe you know enough about us to know that we don't know how to search, or we don't know how to use Twitter. And perhaps one of the things that you need to do is when I do a search on Google and do it badly, that you send me a note and say, you know, you're not doing this right. Why don't you do this and do that and do the other thing? And by the way, Control F works.
Yeah, Dan, why don't you?
What is wrong with you, Dan?
We actually do a lot of that stuff already. So, for example, the spell corrector corrects a lot of your typos already. So we know there are over 20,000 ways to misspell Britney Spears. for example, and we can recognize every single one of them and know that you meant Britney Spears, right? So we actually do a lot of that stuff already. One of the great things about, I think, all of our technologies, speaking for all of us, is that one of the things we've been doing is making it better and better and better and better. And mostly you don't notice it. And that's really kind of the objective, is to make the back end more competent so that your experience in the front is increasingly good. So I think I'm on it. I'm working on it.
I think personalization, especially during search, is like one of the hottest research areas right now, and specifically to do the things that you were suggesting to help.
Okay, so there's bad news and there's good news. The bad news is that we're nearing the end of this program. The good news is that we have these people here for the rest of the week, and that they're going to be here for 3 other programs. You may have been wondering why there are the ancient technology of file cards on your desk. What we want to do, because there are many more questions than can be answered, is have you either tweet or write on those cards questions you would like to see addressed in the rest of the week. While you're doing that, we're going to give them each 2 minutes, Final Jeopardy here. We're going to give them 2 minutes to gather their thoughts about what they'd like to say for us, to each of us at the end for 2 minutes. And while they're getting their thoughts together and you're doing this, I'm going to tell you what's coming for the rest of the week. So write away, tweet away, think away, and let me tell you what's coming. For the rest of the week, or Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, our friends here are going to be discussants on panels that will involve 3 or 4 faculty members from diverse fields, but around particular themes. So on Wednesday, the theme is going to be creativity and culture. And the panelists will be Hassan Elahi, who's here, Asher Epstein, Hassan Elahi from art, Asher Epstein from the Dingman Center for Entrepreneurship, and Lee Wilson Smiley from Performance Studies. I don't know if Lee is here. On Thursday in the morning, the theme will be transparency and boundaries. That's a theme that came up a lot today. And in addition to our friends here, the panelists will be Sahar Khamis from Communication, who's going to talk a little about the Arab Spring, Paul Yeager from the iSchool, Ben Peterson, who just asked a great question here from Computer Science, and Sherry Parks from American Studies is going to be the moderator. On Friday at 10 a.m., we're back here again. And again, in addition to our fabulous guests, the faculty panelists each run an interdisciplinary center, and so a lot of the attention will be how do you get collaboration across disciplines, which is the point that Pat O'Shea raised at the beginning. So it's going to be Linda Aldouri from Public Health. The theme is science in our lives. How do we get information from the realm of expertise to the realm of ordinary life? Linda Aldouri from Public Health, Carol S.B. Wilson from Engineering, Robert Buchanan for the Center for Food Safety and Security Systems, and Margaret Palmer from the National Socio-Environmental Synthesis Center, and chemistry professor Larry Sita will be the moderator. So are you guys ready? Got your final thoughts? You've written down your questions. If you write them down and sort of pass them to the end on either side, we'll collect them and we will use them for the rest of the week. Take it away.
Are we supposed to answer your question in the 2 minutes? Allison's question?
You have 2.
I showed them a question that might seed also conversation.
Okay. So you get 2 minutes, however you choose to use it. It's like a final oral or something like that. Make the most of it.
Yes, Dr. Feldman. My advisor. So to respond to Allison showed us all a question about what the user is. So what is this mythical user we keep talking about? It is, in some sense, the touchstone for all of us, which is we have a notion of the people who are using our technologies. From my perspective, it could be a 23-year-old Twi speaker in Africa who's trying to search for something about medical condition. It could be the 50-year-old medical science researcher who's a native French speaker but querying in German in the middle of Switzerland. It could be a Silicon Valley researcher who's actually interested in philosophy but masquerades at night as a DJ. So we have this broad notion of what our users are, and we have to figure out how we can personalize, how we can accommodate this immense wealth, this immense breadth, this immense diversity. And that's a huge challenge for all of us. You know, it's one thing to provide, for example, a text editor that uses the keyboard that you all have in front of you. Suppose you're trying to type in Japanese or Chinese or Korean. It becomes a much different kettle of fish, typographically speaking. So we have to figure out how do we provide information for these people, how do we accommodate their personal needs, their particular skills, their strengths, and this also covers a range of accessibility issues, right? How do we help out people who are doing Google searches who are blind, or who can't hear, or whatever their particular, modification is. So we have, I think, broadly speaking, a big notion of what users are, and we're trying to help out all of them with the stuff we're building.
Okay, so I think Dan answered that question, so I'll drop that one for now. I think what I didn't emphasize enough in my talk is the priority and the importance of information visualization in the future. So much information is coming our way. It's just exploding. And I talked about the scenarios we can develop based on having all these streams of data. But I didn't emphasize how important the discipline of information visualization is to helping users actually understand that information that's coming their way. So I just wanted to take my 2 minutes to say, any of you that are working in information visualization, it's a huge opportunity out there, and I'm encouraging you young undergraduates that haven't thought about what you're doing in graduate school to go try to attack that problem, because we really need help.
Me? I think I would just like to take a moment and ask, how is everyone in this audience actually going to continue thinking about making the world a better place? So everyone that showed up here has already demonstrated A, a love for learning, and B, a passion for what's going on in the world. So how do we make sure that that passion goes on to the next generation and goes on to all the other people that aren't in this room, and that we're all working together to actually make the world a better place? That's it.
Ooh. All right, wonderful, thank you. All right. A bit of information, FIA UMD is trending with Obamacare on Twitter right now. So yes, keep it up, folks, that's power. All right. So we have a last few bit of thanks to a few thousand people. Ira.
So first of all, one more round of applause for our fabulous visitors. And we're not done with them. Thanks to Pat O'Shea for opening this, and thanks to his whole office, the Vice President for Research Office. A lot of people from there helped us. A lot of folks from University Relations. We have a lot of volunteers here today, and by the way, if anyone is interested in joining up and volunteering and helping out, we'd love to hear from you. One of the odd things about doing a cross-campus enterprise is that you lose the captive audience of your own department, so come see us. Is Jane Gould here? There's Jane. Stand up, Jane. Jane flew in from London for this. She designed our logo and the feel of our website. So thank you, Jane. A round of applause for her. We also want to give special thanks to Ann Rose. Stand up, Ann. Okay. Ann is our technical lead, and everything that works on that website, it's Ann. And anything doesn't work, she has nothing to do with it. Is Charlie Lewitty's here? Charlie in the back. Raise your hand, Charlie. Charlie is our coordinator. You cannot believe how much work this is, and Charlie and Anna are just an enormous, enormous part of this. And then finally, a special thanks to all of you, because basically it's only with your participation that the Future of Information Alliance has a future. So please join us for the rest of the week. Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Actually, yes, we want to do this. We have, at the beginning, we said that there were 10 outside partners who are collaborating with us from all these great institutions. I wonder if you're here from one of those places, if you would just stand up for a second.
Founding partners.
So National Geographic, Museum, Park Service, thank you very much for coming, and we hope you can come for the rest of the week as well.
We'll see you Wednesday. Thank you so much.
Thank you.